or his children, he got emotional. His eyes moistened when he talked about Paul Keating. There was a jolt of energy when I asked Hawke again about his parents. He lifted up in his chair and his eyes sparkled when he spoke about Clem. He was a marvellous man, my father. He always looked for good in people, and he was a very big influence on me, Hawke said. He was very keen to see that I made the most of what I had. I liked him. I loved him. He was my best mate. Clem and Ellie Hawke showered their second son with love and fostered in him the belief that his life was destined for a great purpose. Did Ellie crystallise her ambition for her son and believe he would become Prime Minister? I think so, he replied, at least in the back of her mind. Yes, I think it was there. And Clem? Dad was at least as ambitious for me as my mother was. Hawke had spoken about how deeply he loved Hazel. He regretted not being a better father to Susan, Stephen and Rosalind, or a better husband. He thought he was a better grandfather. He acknowledged his adultery and the impact of the demon drink on their marriage. In this last interview, he described his relationship with Hazel as the most important in my life at that time. When clarification was sought, he became a little tetchy and made it clear he was indeed talking about Hazel. He had always loved her, even if he had not been faithful. He also loved Blanche. He said she was the best thing that happened to me. He had spoken, somewhat awkwardly, about their intellectual, emotional and physical love for each other. She was the light in his life. Her care for him in these later years, as he was slipping away, had deepened their love for one another. Hawke had spent a lifetime trying to convince people that he was a simple, dinky-die Australian, but in truth he was complex. Most people are. He did not see any difficulty loving both Hazel and Blanche. They were the two great love stories of his life. In recent years, Hawke had repaired any lingering rift with Keating. The mending of this relationship had been a work in progress for a decade. It was not a near-death reconciliation. I was sitting with Keating in mid-2016, for example, when Hawke rang to talk about a rather routine matter, and they chatted amiably for several minutes. They were Australia's greatest political duo. They were rivals and sometimes felt contempt for each other, but there was also admiration and warmth between them. They were like brothers. They never hated one another. Hawke's eyes widened and he smiled when he told me how happy he was that he had seen Keating recently. We had a marvellous time, Hawke said. We did a lot of great things together. He had earlier told me, affection is not an inappropriate word now for our relationship. After a series of interviews for this book, and many more over the past decade and a half, this was an opportunity to clarify a few things, to plug a few gaps, and to ask any questions that might help illuminate the life of one of the most remarkable and consequential Australians. Hawke had been interviewed thousands of times since the 1950s, probably more than any other Australian political figure, yet trying to unravel who he really was, what motivated him, how he saw himself, the effect he had on others, and the contribution he made to public life still needed exploring. He had been asked the same things over and over again, so my goal was to prompt more revealing responses. As he neared the end, Hawke was not interested in pushing a legacy or dwelling on regrets. I know this probably sounds a bit boastful, but I think I handled the Prime Ministership very well, he judged. I'm not saying I was perfect. There were some things perhaps I could have handled better, but overall, there is nothing I would change. In his final months, Hawke thought about what he had achieved and not achieved. He thought about those whom he loved and who had loved him. He was at peace with himself and others and with his legacy. He died a few months later. I first met Bob Hawke at a dinner on 27 May 1994. I was 18 years old. I have never forgotten it. In a crowded and noisy room, I approached Hawke, caught his attention and extended my hand. He shook it. He looked into my eyes and asked my name. He gave me his undivided attention.